A leading Muslim American rights group has called on U.S. authorities to be more vigilant after receiving death threats against Muslims living in the United States. It comes after two men claiming to be affiliated with ISIL attacked the anti-Islamic event in Texas last week. Many Muslim Americans say crimes like that have nothing to do with their communities, but they are damaging their image. CCTV's Ray Ruttenberg has the story.
You know that there was a shooting by some people who claim to represent Islam and Muslims. They do not. And there is a fear some people may have that your neighbor may feel afraid of you, or on your job or in your school.
Imam Johari Abdul Malik says he knows all too well the negative associations some people make with his faith. He also knows the impact those associations can have on members of his community.
A lot of people don't feel, I don't feel like being an ambassador today. A woman who wears a scarf, I don't feel like going to a grocery store and being an ambassador. Why can't I just go to the store, buy groceries, take my kids to the soccer game like everybody else?
A recent poll by YouGov shows Americans perceive Muslims to be the most discriminated against group, ahead of LGBT people, African Americans, women, and Asian Americans. The level of discrimination often goes up after violence involving Muslims. 9/11 in New York, carried out by Muslim hijackers. The Boston Marathon bombings last year, carried out by two Muslim brothers. News that the two shooters in Texas had sworn their allegiance to Islamic fighters in Syria meant people here were bracing for more.
If the Christian does that, maybe he's mentally sick. And if maybe African American does that, he's a criminal. If a Muslim does that, he's a terrorist.
That, he says, is a double standard against millions of Muslim Americans. This Islamic center was set up more than 30 years ago by a handful of students who met in this house right behind me. Now more than 4,000 worshipers meet in the new building. But while the size of Muslim communities in America has grown in recent years, perceptions of Muslims have only gotten worse. A month after 9/11, nearly half of all Americans held a favorable view of Muslims. Last year, that number had dropped to around 1 in 4.
I really am American. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
There have been efforts to change that. A television reality show documented 5 Muslim American families. It lasted just 1 season. And earlier this year, the first Muslim college in America opened its doors in California. Other campuses have been arguably less welcoming. Last year, 3 Muslim students were killed at a U.S. university in what many called a hate crime. This week, Muslim American activists warned of new death threats following the Texas shootings.
The problem is that we're always vulnerable to things that we have no control over. These kinds of things happen, and you take 10 steps back even before square one. So it's a challenge for the Muslim community. I don't think any other religious or ethnic minority has that kind of vulnerability to external events.
The solution, people here say, is outreach.
The reality is that the world we live in now means that people who are part of this group have to be willing to reach out to their neighbor so that they can have resilience in our communities.
But that, he admits, may get much harder before it gets much easier. Ray Ruttenberg, CCTV in Falls Church, Virginia.